Hello guys, this is Chetan Mehta from Skill Incubator. Welcome you all. So today I'm making a short video on what is a user story or story in short. Now this is a way we capture the requirements in Agile environment. And I'm going to quickly go over a few things. The agenda for this video is to talk about what is a user story, the essential elements of a story. Then we'll talk about for whom do you write this story and importance of a user story. Okay. So in essence, a user story is a requirement that is written from an end user perspective. So as you know that there are different stakeholders when we talk about there's a customer, SMEs, end user community, project sponsor, and many more. So the way we write the requirement in Agile, specifically in Scrum framework, is using a format called user story. So this is written from a pure end user perspective. How would an end user use that feature capability? We write from that perspective. As I said, it's a style of writing or capturing requirements in an agile software development environment. Now, usually, um, we when we talk about agile, we mainly talk about Scrum, but technically, the concept of user story is coming from XP, which is extreme programming. It is one of the most or one of the first agile environments or agile frameworks that was invented, and the concept of writing story is coming from XP uh, framework, but then it was adopted in Scrum and Kanban and many more frameworks. Now, as I said, the focus is on writing the what aspect, what feature is required by an end user, and not how it's going to be implemented in the solution. So when we write a story, always focus from the what aspect. Okay. One more thing, you can write a story to capture functional requirements, but it can also be used to capture other types of requirements. For example, non-functional, interface requirements, transition requirements. You can use the same concept. You can use the story, user story concept to capture any of these type of requirements. But mainly we focus on functional requirements when we talk about any feature capability. But as I said, you can use the concept of user story for any of these type of requirements. Okay. So having said that, let's talk about the essential elements of a story. So basically there are four parts to any story. First is a story title, then comes a story description. Then the most important part of a story is the acceptance criteria, and then any supplementary information details that goes along with the story that makes it complete, that makes it more rich and informative. So let's look into an example here. For example, we have a story called create report. There's a end user called marketing manager. That's a role that we are talking about, and that person wants to create a report. So we'll start with a story title. We'll give a very simple name, create report. Now this basically should be very clear, very intuitive. What is this story doing? What is the essence of the story? By looking at the name, the title of the story, it should be very clear that what is the goal of the story? In this case, creating a report. That's a story title. Then we talk about the story description. It has got three parts to it. First is as a role. I want to take an action on the system. That's the second part. So that I can get some business value. That's the third part. Right? So first part is the role. Second part is the action we take on the system. And the third part is the business value or benefit that we are getting from taking that action. So if we convert that into an example, as a marketing manager role, I want to create a report. That's an action that marketing manager is taking on the system so that I can get required information to make a strategic decision. That's basically the benefit that a marketing manager is seeking from this story. So three parts to it. Now, the most important part of a story is your acceptance criteria. That's when the requirements, or that's where the requirements, the actual requirements are uh, captured and verified. Now, if you don't have a good acceptance criteria, that means your story is not complete. If I go back to this slide, my story title, story description is good enough for me to understand what the story is doing, what's the essence of the story. But if I were to give this story to my technical team, a developer, solution architect, tester, anyone, they will not be able to do their work looking at these two elements or these two sections of a story. They need to understand what is the acceptance criteria of that story. Plus, it is equally important that you share this acceptance criteria or you get this verified with your customer, with the product owner, because that's when we can say that the requirements have been satisfied using or via this story, right? So usually what we do is when we talk to the product owner, we make sure that the requirements are captured in the acceptance criteria. So when all these elements which are in the acceptance criteria are met, we can safely say that the story has met its objective and is aligned to the customer or to the product owner's requirements. Okay, so very important that we focus on the acceptance criteria. One more thing I would like to highlight that you can write acceptance criteria in different ways. This is one of the most simplistic way you can write. Other way is Gherkin syntax. I'm going to create another video where we'll talk about how do you write acceptance criteria using the Gherkin syntax or Gherkin language using the given when then format. Okay, like for example here it's written in a very simple plain English. For example, verify a user has marketing manager role assigned in the system. So that's something we want to verify before we move forward. Then we talk about once a user logs into the system and navigates to the report page, display the input parameters, meaning what all input parameters that this role has to provide to the system so that system can create a report. Then the third sentence says once marketing manager selects all the required input parameters and submits a request to create a report, the system shall create a report. Okay. Then we say what happens if an invalid request has been made by marketing manager. The system should be smart enough to know how to respond to that request. So we are saying if an invalid request was made, system shall display an error message. Then we are also giving a requirement or stating a requirement saying a marketing manager should be able to download the report in different format. Here we are saying in Microsoft Excel file format. So again, this is not a very detailed way of writing acceptance criteria. I would, in real world, I would get into more details, more specifics in terms of, for example, what type of error message will the system display, right? What is the format of the report? All that can also be added to the story. Now that brings me to the next part, which is the supplementary details. Now your story title, story description, your acceptance criteria basically are the main areas or sections of a story. But oftentimes you may also have to attach supplementary information to make your story more rich, more informative, complete, right? It can be in the form of models, diagrams. It can be like business process diagrams, use case diagrams, or any other diagrams that will add value to the story. It can also be a mock-up wireframes, very important element in agile environment. You should always attach a mock-up or wireframes along with your story. A data dictionary can also be referred. A business rules document can also be referred, and it can also be any requirements illustration notes or meeting notes that you feel will make your story complete, more informative. Okay, so these are the essential elements of a story. Again, I'll repeat: your story title, story description, your acceptance criterion, and then any supplementary information that will make your story complete. Now, who's the audience? Your audience can be your business stakeholders, your technical stakeholders, Within the business stakeholders, your product owner is the most important stakeholder for whom you are writing these requirements, writing these stories. We must make sure that a story is written and the acceptance criteria is written, and we review it with the PO, make sure that the requirements are aligned to their expectations, right? Requirements captured in the story, they are aligned to their expectations. So product owner is one of the most important stakeholder you would want to get your stories reviewed and approved. Besides that, you can also get them reviewed by SMEs, subject matter experts, customer, impacted stakeholders, meaning any stakeholder who will get impacted from the solution you are building. Okay, they may not be end user, but it's always good to get them reviewed by any impacted stakeholder. Technical stakeholders, your solution architect, your developer, testers, UI, UX people, technical writer, anyone who has a reason to understand your story because their work is based on your requirements, right? For example, solution architect, they may have to design the architecture of the system based on the requirements we come up with. Developer, definitely, as we all know, will have to write the code based on the requirements we come up with. Tester will have to verify the system based on the requirements. UI UX will have to design the prototype, design the front end of the front end of the system based on the requirements we come up with. Technical writer, they may have to write user guides or manuals, release notes based on the requirements we come up with. So it is very essential that we keep all the stakeholders engaged and we build these requirements in a very collaborative way. Okay, so that's your audience. And importance of a story. First of all, it's written from an end user perspective. So see, other ways of writing requirements would be your system shall statement, which would be the system shall do this, do that. That's typically written in waterfall model, captured in BRD, FRD type of documents. Now here, the idea is to shift focus from the system and more towards the end user. What is that end user is looking into the system and what feature capability they would be needing to do their job, right? So the requirements are written from an end user perspective. So basically we are giving more or we are empowering the end user and writing requirements from their perspective in very simple plain English. It's not a technical artifact. User story is not very technical. It is written in very simple plain English, written from an end user perspective. Lightweight, as I said, mainly three parts to a story: story title, story description, and your acceptance criteria. Of course, you can add more information in supplementary section, or you can attach more information to your story, make it more complete, more informative, but it's a lightweight. Unlike BRD, FRD use cases, you don't put too much of information in your story, which is not required. You keep only that much information which is important to that story, which makes that story complete and more informative. Okay, that's why it's lightweight. Easy to understand, as I said just now, it's very simple. It's written in plain, simple English. And as it's written from an end user perspective, it is written more from a business background, and we don't get into the how aspect, meaning how that story is going to get implemented, right? So it's very easy to understand. Scalable, you can scale up as much as you want, in the sense you can add more information. As I said just now, that you can attach more information to your story based on the requirement, based on the need, necessity. If you think that by attaching or by adding a process model is going to make your story more complete and more easy to understand, you can do that, right? So it's scalable. You can scale up to the point where you feel that it's going to help your audience. Promotes collaboration across stakeholders. So by that, what I mean is your story is not basically an end result, um, meaning you write a story, but the objective is to have a discussion along with other stakeholders. collaborate with other stakeholders. It can be product owner, it can be your other extended business stakeholders, your technical team members. The idea is to kind of write the story and promote discussion around that story. So it's not just like I write a story, I give it to developers and they start coding and my job is done, right? As a BA, we write a story, but the idea is to collaborate with all the stakeholders so that it promotes discussion and we can make sure that every single stakeholder is on the same page when we talk about the requirements. So it promotes collaboration and maintenance. It's easy to maintain, right? It's a very small, concise requirement artifact. Anything that gets changed, I mean that gets updated, or anytime requirements change, we can go and update the requirements. So it's easy to maintain, right? Unlike BRD, FRD use cases where it would take more time to make any changes, stories are much more easy to update because it's a short, concise requirement and it's easy to maintain. So these are the benefits of writing a story. Now, with that, I think we are done. So I'm going to create some more videos on Agile, on story, and how to write acceptance criteria using Gherkin syntax. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share it. And for all your training needs, you can contact me on 703-200-9921. That's my US number. And 647-699-4001. That's my Canada number. And you can see my email IDs and website. So I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.